Oh, still warm. Welcome to this video, guys. Whether you're new or returning, I'm really happy that you're here. Today we're going to talk about migraine trigger management when you have toddlers. So much changes with kids, am I right? I remember the days back when I had chronic migraine, but I didn't have kids yet. I would just take a bunch of pills and then fall asleep. It was still hard on me, it was still disabling, I still missed out on a lot of stuff and all of the things, but at least I didn't have the toddlers. Then when I got pregnant, I needed to find more creative ways to deal with the pain because I couldn't take pills anymore. But at least I could still sleep it off. Then once the baby comes, everything shifts. It's always noisy, you are always needed. So how are you supposed to manage yourself and your triggers? That's what this video is going to be about. When it comes to migraine attacks and triggering them, there's this commonly known idea of the migraine threshold. The idea behind the migraine threshold is that you have this coin jar, if you will. Throughout the day, as you get exposed to different triggers, you're throwing coins into that jar. You are adding up your triggers. And once that jar fills, you have reached your trigger limit, you have reached your trigger threshold, then boom, you get that migraine attack. When it's money, you want your jar full. But when it's migraines, you want your jar empty. When it's coffee, you want your cup full. If we all want a full piggy bank, why don't we have a full piggy bank? It's because we're always pulling coins back out of our jars. So the same theory applies here with your migraines. If you don't want your migraine jar to fill, you need to be constantly pulling coins back out of that migraine jar. And you also need to realize that those little tiny things are going to add up. You may not feel the first few quarters that are going into your jar. You might not feel that you are adding anything onto your physiological plate until you're already 2/3 or 3/4 or maybe even 90% of the way to getting a migraine. So you can't wait until it's too late. You have to be proactive about managing your migraine attacks. And I know that that is so hard when you have toddlers because you literally don't have time, but that's kind of the point of this video. I'm gonna point out some things that I was doing totally wrong that were making my migraines worse. And I was able to find some ways to hack my life and the way that I was doing stuff so that I was able to manage my migraines without adding too much extra stuff onto my plate. I do have a video about nailing the basics when it comes to migraine, so check that one out, but this one is toddler specific. So let's keep going. Now, you guys, this stuff is hard even when you don't have kids, so don't beat yourself up over it. We're doing our best. These are just tips. I'm not perfect, I'm not expecting you to be perfect either, and you should not beat yourself up if you're not doing things perfectly. These are just ballparks, these are plans, these are ideals, and they're ideas. They're ideal ideas. Let's talk about eating. Eating is so hard. Now, I get super overstimulated, so I found that I don't like to eat my own meal while my toddlers are eating. My girls are 1.5 and 2.5, so they're just really busy right now with their hands. And if I'm trying to eat and I'm also trying to get them stuff, it just gets too chaotic. But then what I ended up doing was just not eating. I wasn't leaving myself enough time to eat. I was like, oh, I'll eat later, the food's already cooked. No, we all know it never happens like that. So you have to eat while your kids eat. You have to snack while you're cooking. If my kids leave a bunch of leftovers, I've been taking the leftovers instead of giving them to the dog. Sneak sips of water if you have a few minutes of downtime. And for goodness sake, just make yourself a serving of whatever the heck your toddlers are eating. If they're eating a charcuterie board of random little bits and pieces of stuff, just make yourself one. If they steal it, who cares? Steal from each other, at least then all of you are eating. I found this tough because my kids actually have a different diet than me because I'm dairy intolerant, but they're not. So I found this a little bit harder. I did need to find some workarounds, but now all I do is I pull myself a little aliquot from the main pot before I add the cheese for the rest of my family and little stuff like that. So you can do what works for your family or whatever this makes sense for you and your dietary stuff in your home, but make sure you're prioritizing eating because if you're not doing that, you're just setting yourself up for failure, like point blank. You're just setting yourself up for a bad time. Lights and sounds, I have a couple of tips for those because lights and sounds suck when you're a migraine person, even when you're not in a migraine phase, right? So for sounds, if you have a long shift ahead with your babies, I recommend putting in earplugs They have ones that don't muffle the sound. They have ones like loop earplugs that just turn down the volume without making the sound seem like you're underwater. Once again, this is an area where I shifted in one direction and I got so into silence that it actually started causing more harm than good. I found that I don't like dead silence. When it's too quiet, I have a lot of trouble with knowing how much time has passed, and I also have trouble with my thoughts. My thoughts just kind of go everywhere and it's exhausting. So I really like to have some really chill acoustic guitar music to kind of occupy my mind when my mind starts to drift off. Or I'll like to have some music that makes me feel good. So maybe it has a really good message, or perhaps it's worship so I can get some time with the Lord. But no matter what I'm listening to, I try to make it something that makes me feel good afterwards. And that is not very stimulating to hear if the girls start screaming a lot and I can't pause it. Because nothing gets me stressed out like when the girls are yelling and at the same time the music is pumping. It's like, whoa, I loved the music 10 seconds ago, but now it is driving me crazy. Y'all have been there, you're parents, you get it. Doing the acoustic guitar music makes it so that you don't get that in the background. I do feel like that adds up. And I also have been doing things like opting for a broom instead of a vacuum, because even though it takes me a lot longer and it's not quite as satisfying, it does really seem to help my head. In addition to sounds, lights can also be super triggering for migraine people. I do not see very well in low light, so I don't do well wearing sunglasses indoors because it makes it too dark for me to actually see. But what I do like to wear is my migraine glasses that you guys saw during that AI video. Let me grab them. These babies are made specifically for people who suffer with migraine, and they block certain wavelengths of light that are meant to make you less likely to get a migraine. It's science, I guess. They're pink, which is a bit much, but you do get used to it, and in my old days when I did computer editing for a long time, these were a must. If you do computer stuff a lot now, these are currently a must. They have lots of different frame shapes, colors, styles. Find something that works. And actually, for my dudes out there, there aren't many of you, but I know you're there. I think there are even some that come in green or blue lenses, but they block out different wavelengths. So just be mindful of that. That's easy enough for me to say when I work from home, and it's not that embarrassing to wear migraine glasses if you're a migraine person who works from home, but I get that in the corporate world, that's not very fun. I did not wear my migraine glasses when I had a real job. What I wore instead was, I kid you not, a baseball hat that had a visor because it blocked my eyes from seeing the overhead lights, and just that was enough. Just that did great. Try it, even at home. Another huge thing I do as a migraine mama with 2 toddlers is I try to conserve my energy in little ways throughout the day as much as I possibly can. When it comes to migraine, little things really do add up, so don't underestimate the power of those little things. One of the biggest changes that I have made is we are now a 100% lift-free home. So I'm able to care for both of my toddlers without picking them up for literally anything. And that means that now I am not doing these 20, 30-pound deadlifts many times a day. You know how great that is for my migraine threshold? So how do I practically actually achieve that? A few things. I had to get a potty chair and a high chair that they could both crawl into. Of course, the smaller one had to be old enough to be able to do that safely, but now that she is, that has been so freeing. Before that, she was light enough for me to pick her up without a huge deal anyway, but around 20 pounds, way too much. There are tons of options for little toddler step ladders that can help them up to the sink. I really like having a toddler tower because it has a railing around the baby completely so they can crawl up into it and stand up and be at the counter with you. I use the toddler tower not just for washing their hands at the sink, but also for having baby A crawl herself up into her own crib. Baby A is 2.5, so she has no trouble doing that, and then I just move the tower away so that she can't crawl back out. For baby B, the smaller one, she's not only still breastfeeding, but she's also still too small to crawl into her crib. So for her, we have a floor bed. It's a big twin mattress that has a playpen all the way around it. It's basically an adult-sized crib. I can open up the gate without needing to lift her into it, and then close it so that she's safe in there. After meals, after painting, when the girls are nasty, covered in food, I actually don't bring them up to the sink to wash their hands. I just use a soaking wet rag, and I wipe them all over the place. And even though that means a little bit more laundry, it saves me a lot of bending over and reaching at the sink, which I think does help. And while the girls and I are playing, I literally lay down as much as I can to the point that my babies actually copy me and they lay down with me. Reminder for anybody new, I'm not just a migrainer, I also have a brain leak, so I'm supposed to stay flat, so that's a little bit weird, but I feel like this is relevant even for people who just have migraine, because resting is really important regardless of whether you're leaking. If I'm playing dolls with the babies, like doing a tea party, then I'm probably gonna be laying down. If I'm reading a book to them, I'm definitely flat. If I'm building blocks, I'm flat. If they wanna watch TV with me, I'm flat. If they wanna brush their teeth, I'm probably sitting down. I'm not flat for that, but I have basically looked at everything that I do with the babies, and I've tried to determine what's an easier, lazier, I don't wanna use that word, but you know, physically lazier, more convenient way that I can do this. What's a way I can offload this onto the babies so that they can do it and I don't need to. All that stuff's gonna be super crucial when you're a migrainer. Left on the itinerary is cleaning, tidying up that stuff, and recharging. So, cleaning. I kept finding myself frantically cleaning every time the babies took a nap. That's every mom. Everybody says sleep when the babies sleep. Every mom says that's literally impossible because then when am I gonna clean? And it's totally true, but now we're at the point of toddlers. So at a certain point, you do need to shift that mindset back to, I can do some things while these babies are awake, even though there's two of them and they're undoing everything you're doing while you're doing it. So when the babies go down for their nap, you have to rest. If you're a migraine-y person, you do have to rest. It's hard because that has to get priority over a lot of the more urgent things that are in the house. But if you don't do that rest now, then the migraine will get you later and force you to rest at a time that's really not convenient. So here's what I do at nap time instead of one extreme or the other. I do like a 10 or 15 minute power clean of everything that is super urgent. If I have bills that need to be paid, if I have a grocery order that I wanted to order, or some other order. I've been really meaning to switch over the laundry and just haven't been able to while the babies were up. Whatever it is, I make my list of the super urgent priority things while the babies are awake, so that the second they're both down, I can just bust through that list. Mentally, it's off my mind. I'm not thinking about what I need to do while I'm doing that power clean. I'm just following my list and doing it. And then once I'm done with that little bit, anything like the dishes or general tidying, sweeping, wiping the counters, even the bathrooms, all that stuff can wait. If there's pee on the floor, it can't wait. Everything else can wait. So immediately, I make myself a ton of food, I plop myself on the couch, and I force myself to sit there through an entire episode of something. It can be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. On my more generous days when I'm like, oh, I really need a break, and I want to soak in the break, I'll do an hour-long episode of something. But usually it's only 20, 30 minutes. I have to sit. And it's funny because I've found that I know that once the episode is over, I can get back to my work, and so I get really excited to get myself there, to get my lunch done made so I can sit, so I can start the episode so that I have more time while the girls are sleeping. But since I took the time to do that episode, then for the rest of the nap, I actually feel recharged. And I feel good about myself for having taken that break. Even though during the break, I usually actually don't do a very good job of feeling rested. Usually I feel very anxious while I'm resting because I feel like I want to be doing. Typical. And one more thing, if messes around the house literally drive you crazy and you don't think you can physically watch an episode of something while there's a mess, then I recommend you clean that room while the babies are still up so that it'll be ready for you when they go down. Or if you really need to, it can be the first thing on your urgent clean list, but I wouldn't really recommend that. We're trying to be super mindful with every minute, and that's something that you probably can tag team. You can chaotically stress clean, stress sweep, stress wipe counters while the babies are awake, but you cannot stress rest while the babies are awake. And that's why it's so important to prioritize getting that rest. There came a point when I just felt so overstimulated and so touched out, so overwhelmed and overworked that I no longer wanted to consume. I didn't really want to watch YouTubes as much or listen to podcasts as much, and I feel like that was actually very bad for my mental health, and it worsened my mental health, even though I needed to take the break for my mental health. So I want to encourage you, if you have toddlers and you have migraine, to continue to seek out activities that are gently thought-provoking. just so you can keep your brain working on something that isn't so stressful. I already mentioned using things like guitar music to help boost my mood during the times when it was getting too quiet, but I'm recently getting back into podcasts as a way to keep my mind busy and keep myself from spiraling into thoughts that I just don't want to spiral into. So if you can handle listening to a podcast, it might actually help boost your mood and your energy, even though it feels like it will take energy to listen to it. I'm currently listening to mothering podcasts because that way when I have my headphones on and the babies start yelling and I need to quickly push the button to pause it, I'm not that frustrated with the babies for interrupting my podcast because my podcast is about mothering and being in this difficult season and just embracing it. So the content that I'm listening to, it's giving me chills thinking about it because it's just so much better of a situation that I'm in now. I have that noise canceling from the headphones so I'm not feeling overstimulated, and I have the maternal support of whoever it is that's on this podcast. They have these gentle, loving, motherly voices, and they just make me not feel alone. They make me not feel like a loser for not being able to handle this. So I really appreciate it. Anytime you listen to a podcast or go watch a YouTube, be mindful of how you feel afterwards and focus on sticking with the ones that make you feel good afterwards. And if this is making you feel good, if this is making you feel motivated, please do hit subscribe so you can keep coming back to here and keep feeling good. Let me go get you something. I made a video in the past called Activities to Do During a Migraine, and that touched on a bunch of different gentle things that you can do to keep your mental sanity, but this is a new one that I didn't know about at the time that I made that video, so here's a new one. This is called Journal 29, and it's a bunch of riddles and stuff. It's an interactive book game, which is really fun. There was a little bit of plot at the beginning, but basically each day has been some kind of riddle, some kind of puzzle. Let me go to one that I didn't solve yet. So there's the riddle. What you do is you solve the riddle on this side of the page, and then you go to the website and you input what you think the answer to the riddle is, and it spits out a key. So you'll have key number 45 is this word, and then this key is probably going to be used to solve something on a later puzzle. For example, up here it says key 40 and key 43 are both needed to help you solve this gear puzzle to get key 45. So right now I'm back here, I'm like maybe a third of the way through. But what I love about this with toddlers is it doesn't matter if the girls write in the book, because it's a book for writing in, and it's a book where I can focus on just this riddle for maybe 5 minutes or whatever, and getting interrupted is okay, and then I can come back to it. A lot of times it's a puzzle, or it's something where I'm not really sure what my next step is going to be, so I want to take some time away from the book anyway before I go back to it. So this has been working out really well with toddlers. Other activities that I had in that other video, like paint by number, that wouldn't really work that well with the toddlers because they would want to join. So it's a little tough that a lot of things, activities, interests, there has to be some compromise there. You definitely have to make some changes from what you actually maybe truly want to do. But hopefully these ideas have sparked some interest in you or heightened your curiosity and have made you want to start bringing some more enrichment into your life again, even if you suffer from migraines. I have a ton more tips on parenting with migraine. I'm gonna have more coming out soon. And since I'm already planning on making more videos similar to this, please drop your tips in the comments so that I can take those tips and put them into my new videos with your permission. One brain is great. Over 30,000 brains is much, much better. Without further ado, I see you next time.